Do you know one thing I realized we haven't been doing, which is like, this is how we upgrade our professionalism. Every other podcast I listen to, people reintroduce themselves every episode.
Oh yeah.
We should probably remind people who we are. Yeah.
Okay. Who are you?
I'm Lola. I work in product and I have been working in tech for the last 20 years. Who are you?
Nice. I am Mamuna. I also am in product, and I have been in product for 15 years. I had a pre-product life, which was non-technology. We'll save that for another time. Or actually, maybe we spoke about that.
Listen to episode 1.
Episode 1, yes. Go back to the archives. Yeah. But yeah, that's who we are.
That's who we are.
Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech.
And how are we doing today?
I am good. I have very much a busy brain, lots going on professionally and personally. And so I kind of feel like I'm just trying to tread water a little bit right now. Yeah. And then I know it'll kind of stabilize soon, but just been busy. How about you?
I mean, today specifically, I feel electric. I do my... but actually physically electric. Like my life hack is I have to go and exercise really intensely in order to kind of like inject myself with happy hormones and like all the dopamine hit. And I do it in the morning. So I did that this morning. But the gym class was beast. Like it was so painful. Even the fittest people at my gym, of which I am not one, they were like on the floor at the end of the session, like gasping for air and like everyone's guzzling water and there was no banter. But that does mean that the high I've been on for the last 45 minutes is really, really high. Because I was like, whoa, my body went through it and I'm out and I'm yay.
Didn't we talk about this last week and you had like a injury because you went beast mode?
I went to the gym tired. Yeah. I'm a sucker for punishment.
In athletics mode, huh? So
athlete. I did the athlete thing though. I have one of my gym instructors. She does facial stretch. So this is the stretch that re-energizes your muscles. So she kind of comes in and she pulls your leg and she pushes you and she kind of like stretches and then you have to push back and it kind of like just gets the blood flowing. It's almost like it's similar to the way breath work works, where you kind of like change the flow in your body. Facial stretch is something similar. This is so unscientific the way I'm describing it, but I've done that. Then I went to see my chiropractor who also did some acupuncture with some electric pulses. So just like an athlete, we just kind of retune the body and then we go back into the gym and we go hard. But I do it all for the happy hormones. I do not look like an athlete. I would not go and do a triathlon. I do it purely so I can sit in the mornings and I'm like high on life. That's my addiction.
Anyone has to look like an athlete. I think it's more the mental state for you.
Yeah.
You know, that for anyone, it's like that's the thing that drives you and keeps you energized.
But you know, when you tell people that you go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week at 6 a.m. in the morning, you do this crazy stuff, they're expecting to see some racked and like done. It's super lean and it's like abs and core. And I was like, I don't look like that. I got Nigerian hips. Yeah. Nigerian belly. There's like soft. I describe myself as fluffy fit. You know, it's like fluffy, but there is a strong core, so it doesn't look like your traditional athlete. But I do it for my feels. I feel great for it. So, although we are obviously. Oh, is that your
watch? It's my watch telling me the time. Don't mind my watch.
What a random time to tell you though. 9:17 a.m. Your watch just like. Not 9 a.m., not 9:15, 9:17.
No, just 9:17. FYI, everyone.
I love that. So normally we're kind of date agnostic because, you know, we're recording it as we go. But today is International Women's Day.
Yes, it is. Shout out to all of our
amazing
people.
Yes. women, femmes, anyone who identifies with feminine energy, shout out to all of us today. Although, should be every day. But today, we shall kind of call in a little bit of extra focus.
Yes.
And I kind of always find this day a little bit ironic because, again, it's like the PR train is so effective for International Women's Day. Like companies are there rolling out all the things, the stories, the campaign, the photo shoot, the sponsorship, the hashtag, the glossy pics. We won't get into politics, but like newspapers in the UK putting influential women's lists together with very, very controversial women on the list. It's like there's a lot of let's avoid those topics. But I was a bit like, what the heck? But anyway, but my favorite thing about International Women's Day actually, I think started 2022, which is a Twitter bot called the Gender Pay Gap Bot. This will be in the show notes. And it was started by a couple, a woman and her partner. And they basically, so in the UK a few years ago under Theresa May, it was made a legal requirement for companies over a certain employee size to report their gender pay gap. So the difference between what men earn and women earn in the company. So that is now all public record. And so this bot would take a PR tweet from a company, go get their last gender pay gap, and then just post, hey, company with this glossy post, your gender pay gap is women earn 25% less than the men in your company. And so it kind of like shames, like, here's your reality. If you want work to do, go do this, fix the gender pay gap. And it's such a great bot. I wish that information was available globally because I think a lot of people would be surprised and shocked. But it's also really fun to see because increasingly some companies are making the difference. And in some cases, women do earn a little bit more than the men, or because it's got a couple of years of data now, it can actually say, hey, this is the data change from one year to another. It's been the same, or it's gotten worse, or it's gotten better. So that accountability to do a thing that has to happen before you do your International Women's Day post.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
If they care. If they care. But that's for another, I guess, topic. At least we know. We, the reader, know. And we have the decision to, if we have the option to decide accordingly.
Absolutely. And I mean, on stats, there are still too many stats available to show that the pay gap is too big between men and women, and specifically too big when it comes to BIPOC and women who identify from underrepresented groups. I guess a question for you, Mamuna, is like, do you feel in tech that you have been underpaid as a woman and as a Black woman in some way, shape, or form? Is that a thing that you feel consciously aware of, or like what's been your experience?
I would say prior to now, like definitely earlier on, even in the middle of my career, I definitely felt that. For me, I feel like it's more so because, I don't know. I don't know if this is fair, but, a lot of times I think about like knowing your worth.
Yes.
And a lot of times it's like, we're just happy to get the job. I was just happy to get the job. I should personalize that. I was just happy to get the job. And so it was like, okay, how bold am I to ask for what I think I'm worth? And then what I think I'm worth is probably not the same as like the next person. Yeah. And I also think that for a lot of the roles that I had, I was just a random out of the street. But then sometimes there were people who were coming in from a referral, or they used to work with a person. And so they got that like buddy pay. And so definitely there are cases where, I was being paid less or being given less opportunity. And that, that was what it was. I feel less of that now because I feel just given how hard I work and the bar and standard I set for myself and people around me, I know what I deserve. And far be it for me to rely on a company to tell me what I'm worth. I think I can now put that forward and then have the conversation accordingly and walk away, if I feel like I need to. But, and that the walking away component, I acknowledge that like that definitely comes from a place of privilege. Yeah. Because not everyone has that. But, I think at least having that awareness is important when you're especially negotiating. What about yourself?
I mean, I feel like I spent years underpaid. And I would say that's in the context of being the person amongst some of my friends who, like, a lot of friends would be going for jobs and they would come to me for help on how to negotiate, because I felt very confident being like, okay, I think this is how much I want to earn. The reason I was underpaid is because of that point of like, where is the empirical data to help me understand the impact the role I'm about to do will have on the company so that I can say the right number. And like, despite being, I think, fairly good at self-advocating for my salary, I consistently went below the number that I think the average mediocre individual of a different hue might have asked for when put in that same position. So I definitely think the lesson for me is to be even bolder, like genuinely. But then the other thing is I participate in every salary survey that comes around. When you come and you say to me, ooh, there's a spreadsheet and people have been putting their jobs and salaries and equity in there, I'm like, I'm going to open that document and I'm going to go all the way in, because that stuff is gender neutral to a certain extent, right? It's just like this data is going around. So when I see the top numbers there, I'm like, okay, is that a number that should apply to me? Like, obviously location and all that good stuff. But I definitely think it's important to really know what the market is paying for the thing that you're doing. And that information's in recruiters. There might be salary surveys. In tech, there's that website, Levels FYI, which is great, I think, for a lot of companies. Like places where you can go and at least just baseline. And I had a conversation with someone who had the right information about what their job would pay, but they were so intimidated about the gap between their current role and asking for this crazy number in a new role.
Right.
And I was like, this is not about you and how badly you've been paid before. This is about what they would pay in the market for that job. And if you're going to go get that job, then you ask for that number. And they got it.
Yes.
And they
of course
were like,
they did.
Yeah. And it was like, this is double my salary. I was like, yeah, that's market rate for that job. That's what matters. So,
because you're doing the work, so you must well be paid for it.
Exactly. And I think women, we sometimes worry about the idea of like asking for too much.
Yes.
And probably the muscle is like, whatever you feel is too much, maybe just push yourself to ask for even more, because what can they say? No.
No.
They can only say no.
Immigrant mentality to an extent, though.
Yes.
Like for some.
Don't make a fuss.
And it's that, exactly. Just like be happy with what you have, just stay quiet in your corner, do the work hard. You'll get noticed that way.
No.
Ask for
my
a
philosophy
reason.
is very different. No. I'm going to work hard. You best pay me.
Right.
Let's all make money here. Let's all make money, right?
Right.
I like nice things. You best pay me. I will be here. I'll be doing the do, charging full speed ahead, whatever it takes. But put that money in my pocket. Thank you very much. This is where we're at.
I would be curious, in the spirit of International Women's Day.
Yeah.
What is your proudest professional moment?
Oh, good question. Well, the PR version of me is like, oh, I have so many. I've had such wonderful teams and people and blah, blah, blah. Joke. But I think the one that comes to mind for me is 2016. Anyone who knew me between 2011 and 2016 and heard me talk about work is probably going to be surprised to have me say this. But in that time frame, I worked for this agency in London that no longer exists, called Head, and we were tiny and we were like just deeply connected to each other. We were like a team of, I don't know, super passionate, scrappy, crazy. We had a very unhealthy sibling-like bond in the leadership of the company. So like we'd have fights and arguments and bitch about each other. But like every time it came down to it, we would be there for each other for like pitches and project work, and like the creativity really bubbled up. And I loved that team because it was such a special time in my career. And we, at some point, decided that the agency was just going to try and get an exit. And if anyone's ever planned an exit in any company, and specifically in an agency, you know it's a long road. Because if you're selling an agency, you're not selling like specific IP, like you don't have a product, right? So you have to sell a strong going concern. You have to say to market, this is a great reputation. There's a great forward order book. We have great client lists. We've got retainers. We've got profitability. We've got great cost control. Like there are all these financial stories you have to tell. And obviously you can't tell everyone that you're going to do that. You kind of have to keep the agency going. And you have to be working on this like dual track. So we kind of had like a 2-year roadmap of things we had to do, levels of performance, goals we had to hit. We had to be even bolder with pitches, what type of client work, like trying to go after anything, but still be values oriented. And it was tense. My MD and I, we had to have therapy one time. Her coach had to come in, lock us in a room, and we just went at each other because the emotions were high. But the reason it's my proudest moment is at the end of that 2016, I left just before it happened because I was pregnant and I was struggling with my pregnancy, but I was still involved in the company as such. We successfully exited. And it was amazing to kind of be at that point. And I remember when this was my first payout as such. And I remember my husband and I had a baby moon in Paris, and we were in a hotel room in Paris, and we woke up one morning and I had a ping from my bank, and I opened the app, and I had just never seen that much money in my account before. And I was literally like, what is this number? And, but it was also like the emotional culmination of, and this is what we've been doing for the last 2 years. So like all of those things just combined in that one time. And honestly, I was overwhelmed, but I don't think I've never felt as proud, just because that was the best example for me of working hard and then achieving the goal. Like that's the singular time that I feel like it's been something that I aspired for to that level, and then I achieved it. Every other time, you get a promotion, you're kind of like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so surprised.
Right.
I didn't, whatever, you get a pay rise, and it's kind of like, it's great. Or you launch a product and it's amazing, but to have set such a long-term goal and then to hit it and then to see the money in your account, there's something quite, I don't know. It's a high I don't think I felt at any other point.
Okay, let's see. I think, so I guess mine's like an interesting one. I think I would pick the one where when my pre-product life, I was just kind of riding the wave. I was like, okay, I'm just going to kind of like, things will happen to me to get me to where I need to be in life. And I was just kind of letting the professional life take me to the next steps. And I hit like this ceiling, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I was in this rut. I was like, I don't feel like I'm stuck. Things aren't moving forward. I have other people defining my success. Like I have no ownership in my own like path. And I remember there was an opportunity for me to move into products. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. And like no one knew what product was at that time. It was just this ambiguous
like everyone else
thing.
Like,
yeah. And so, I went out. It was one of those like almost like a job fair type thing, but it was like a bigger company, and they were there. So I like went and spoke to the person who was like opening up this new venture in DC at the time, and I spoke to them. They were like, "You're perfect, like come on board." And I was like one of the early PMs there, and within like maybe 6 months, again, I knew nothing about technology, not nothing about technology, but nothing about product, like building products.
Yeah.
But I was able to, in parallel, learn about product and ship a beta of a product at the same time. And while I was doing it, I was just stressed because I was like, imposter syndrome. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like learning at the same time. I'm learning what, user experience means, how to do testing, how to run sprints, how to like all these things. No idea what these things were, but I was just doing them. And we got this beta out. And I remember we had this like announcement. I was like talking to a bunch of users in DC, and they were like, oh, this is so exciting. And this was these folks were, so I was in lobbying world, and these folks were like policy experts, and like, oh wow, you're now in this space doing this thing. We used to see you in this other area. And I think that was like the first moment for me where I realized that I had successfully made a switch from like one lane into another by myself, not by myself, but through my own steps. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, like I'm actually capable of doing something different. Like, what else can I do? And I think that that question has followed me along in my career. Like, what else can I do? Like, how far can I push this thing? How much success can I have here? And I think that's been a drive for me. So I feel like that was like a proud moment for me, only because I realized that I was not limited to what others would give me.
Yeah. And you shook off the imposter syndrome at that point as well. It's because like you were who you were, you know? I love that.
Yes. It definitely, I mean, I think everyone has it from time to time here and there. Definitely more self-aware when it pops up for me, because I'm like, okay, why am I feeling this? Is there something to dive deeper into personally? But I think that was that moment I was like, okay, I got this. And that felt great. Yeah.
I think that was an important moment because it's what brought you here now.
Yes.
And I think I haven't heard a single product person talk about their journey into product and not go through this weird, what is product? How did I, what does it mean? How would I, what are we going to do? And all of that good stuff. It's kind of like, it is the sort of the rite of passage. And then the successful ones do have that moment where it's like, and I emerge fully fledged.
Yes, I agree. Good shares.
Good shares, indeed. Super proud moments. I think it's probably worth always, you know, we talk about like brag docs. It's probably worth tracking and remembering those. Like when you have dark days or like it feels really hard or everything's piling on top, just be like, you know what? There have been some really good highs. Yes. And I should remember those and pull down some of that memory high and memory energy to just help you get through the darker spots, you know? Okay. We have a letter.
Oh, let's see.
We have a letter. Okay, I read the last one. So do you want to crack in and tell us about today's letter in your best reading voice? I love that preparing.
Let me take a quick sip of my tea.
In your fancy cup.
Yes, my fancy cup. Here we are. Dear Lola and Mamuna, I'm a senior leader in a well-regarded tech firm. I was recently approached to interview for a job at another company. It's not a company my current employer would normally consider a competitor, but they are building something similar to what I've been working on for the past 4 years. I was intrigued enough to interview, thinking I would never leave, and I've now received a job offer to come in and head the team. Their product is maybe 1 year behind where my current employer is. My question regards IP infringement. I'm sure my boss will see me taking this role as a conflict. My contract doesn't mention anything specific, but I'm concerned my current employer could prevent me from taking this role. How should I approach this? I don't feel stuck in my current role and I love my team, but I also think I should really consider taking this role, and I'm worried I may be unable to accept it. Sincerely, a non-US.
Ooh, this is a good one. So I guess go ahead.
First caveat, I think this is important only because we're talking about contracts and IP infringement, et cetera, et cetera. Anything we say here is not legal advice. This is our own personal experience, personal thinking.
Yep.
So please carry on.
Well, so I yes. And then the first thing I was going to think is like reading it and obviously looking into this story. It's not so much IP infringement. It's about non-compete. Because if it's like a person going to a competitor, it's whether or not the things you know and the things you've done are now being used as an advantage by that competitor to take your knowledge. I think IP infringement is more specific to like taking code or like, you know, copying exact designs and product outputs and specs and stuff, which comes under a different category of like legal rules and constraints. So I think this is more about the idea of non-compete between two companies.
For IP, a lot of companies have this form where they have you fill it out before you start to say what you came in with, so that when you leave, so that when you leave, you know, you've aligned on like what you knew to be true before you started versus departure.
That's a really good idea. I've never done that. But yeah, I think that's important. A lot of my perspective is coming as like a person who spent most of my career in the UK under mostly European laws, legal employment law, and like now working in Canada and being more exposed to like North American, both Canadian and US legal agreements. But like, I personally don't believe I've ever seen non-compete clause written in a North American employment contract. When I was hired by the Canadian company that I moved to Canada with, I explicitly asked, because I had literally had to negotiate my way out of a 6-month notice period in my previous employer in the UK, which is horrible, but quite common. And I was surprised that there wasn't a concept of non-compete, that there weren't, or even the idea, like we call it in the UK, gardening leave. So like if you're in finance and you're going to go to work from one financial institution to another, usually they put you on gardening leave where you're no longer working for them, but you cannot start working for the other person, and they pay you. And so I've had friends who've had 3-month holidays because they're on gardening leave, in between jobs. But again, that's usually like explicitly stated. So I think if you can't find it in a contract, it's unlikely it's enforceable in any functional way. But I know that in Europe, it's incredibly common for that stuff to be in the contract. And for a lot of the laws there to favor the employee, to kind of, yes, a company can enforce a notice period or gardening leave. But then if you're going to do that, you got to pay them. You can't just make them leave and then not pay them. You have to pay them, even if they're no longer working for you. So yeah, I don't know. What's been your experience?
I've actually seen a couple of flavors. I've worked at companies that have explicitly had non-compete clauses in my contract, and they would explicitly state either company names that I could not go and work for a period of like 6 months to a year, or they would describe the type or industry of company that would be, captured in that non-compete. The thing that was interesting was that even with that spelled out, you would still find some people would still go to them.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works out. But I think if you're not if you aren't holding some IP or something that they knew to be the core of their product, then they just kind of say whatever. Yeah. I would say though, more and more now, at least for the companies I've worked for, it's been less common to see those. Yeah. And I think more of the weight is in our minds. Yes. And there's that sense of like loyalty, right? Where it's like, I don't want to be perceived as taking something from this employer and going to another. And I think that's what they potentially are feeling here.
Yeah, I can sense that. Yeah.
I think that sense of loyalty is rough because you don't have to have it.
I am that little, the kind of talk about the angel and the devil on your shoulder. I'm going to be the devil on your shoulder. You have invested in your career, dear writer. You have developed your capabilities. You have built experience that is valuable in the market. You shouldn't be surprised that you are desirable in the market. And ideally, don't let an unnecessary sense of loyalty prevent you from getting paid and doing the work that you feel good at. I mean, we talked in the first episode in an economy of layoffs. Yes. Companies are not loyal. They will not reward you for limiting your future potential by sticking with them right now. And if they want to reward you for that, then they better put some money and some actual activity, like incentive behind it. Otherwise, that loyalty is nice, but I think especially, we don't know if the author is male or female, but if you happen to be female, this is International Women's Day. Go get paid. Right. Don't hold yourself back, you know?
Yes. I think that, more and more, and I think just as you're thinking about your career, you're progressing, you want to make sure that you're always feeling engaged, you're always feeling valued. And I think if you're putting your eye out there, there's something that's interesting to you. It may not be that your current employer is treating you poorly or anything like that, but it may be that the new challenge is interesting, right?
Exactly.
And that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I think that we all want to continue to feel challenged and to grow and to develop. And it's only natural for us to progress out of a company at some point. And this just happens to be their point.
And I think the best way to leave a job is actually on a high, right? The idea that you're not running from something, but you're running towards something. So there's no reason why you have to leave your current job. But this opportunity, and it sounds completely serendipitous, and I put my hand up. Serendipity has been my BFF my entire career. You see serendipity come your way. This is a job that you were perfect for. Go towards it, because maybe that is the way that your career is supposed to pan out. And what's the worst thing that could happen? You kind of go, you get this different experience, but now you're even more qualified, because guess what? You've proven you can do the same thing again. And so, I think there's a lot of upside here. And again, as we look at your contract, but as you consider, like, unless you are explicitly prohibited in some way, it's probably unlikely that this would be that your current employer would prevent you. We did do some research, and there are states in the US that explicitly prohibit non-compete, like California, where a lot of tech companies are incorporated. The other place where a lot of tech companies are is Delaware. They kind of allow non-competes, but they keep raising the bar as what qualifies as non-compete behavior, right? So I think this kind of context, I would be surprised if it met that bar. And we've also heard President Biden wants to actively eradicate it and make it healthier for people to move around and kind of like, So I feel like the concern legally may be less, like you should be less concerned. But again, go get a real lawyer to check your contract and double check and confirm that. But I guess the other thing is, like, if their boss is really upset, the worst case scenario is that they resign and have to leave that day rather than work out a notice period, right? It's like, you hate me right now, but we can make up later kind of thing.
Yes. Like they actually can't say, no, don't go.
Yeah, they literally can't. They literally can't. I think it's important. And personal relationships being what they were, like, as somebody who has, you get hired in by somebody who really does a lot of work to bring you in. And they're like, I've wanted you on my team and I've cultivated, and you feel like they've given you so many opportunities. But then if they care about you, the person, and you have a better opportunity,
set you free into the world.
Set you free. And if they need a moment to get over that, then c'est la vie. Give them that moment and maybe ping them in a few months and go for a drink.
Yeah. Or some tea.
Or some tea. Or a nice lemonade. Whatever is your preference. But yeah, I wouldn't oversteer on that kind of thing.
That's amazing. We appreciate the letters, and we appreciate this person for writing in.
Yes. So before we go, quickly, what are you learning about this week, Mamuna?
Well, I am reading this interesting book by, it is by Claire Hughes Johnson. It's about scaling people. Okay. And I'm still reading through it, but the thing I really like about this book so far is that there's a focus on writing and getting you to think about, not just think about, but to write down how you make decisions, how things are done, like building your own operating model. And, I'll sometimes do talks and people are like, how do you do that? And I just rattle it off. Yeah. It's in there. But if I were to try to find, it's documented somewhere, I have never written it down. Okay. And so this has just been one of those like reminders that, like, hey, put it down, like make it a thing, iterate on top of it, and like really develop your model here. And so that's something that I want to work on building out. But that's been what I've been learning about. How about you?
I love that. I'm going to put that on my reading list. I am in all the regs Last time I was learning about super complicated cryptography terms. This time I'm basically into what are the rules around the internet, around lending, securities, money transmission, advertising. If it's a behavior we see online and there's a regulation, right now I'm in it. And the reason is, like, when you're defining new business models around new tech, you want to know what the boundaries are for what you can and can't do. And the interesting thing that I have learned recently is, and we have amazing lawyers in my company that I work with, is like regulation is becoming more vague on purpose. So like regulators know that tech is innovating faster than their ability to understand and regulate it. So in some cases, they're happy to put out a vague regulation so that depending on what people do, they'll then decide that that's the thing that's wrong.
They can use it.
Yeah. Whereas historically, they'd be like, okay, to the letter. And then, people would literally be paid to find the gaps between the clauses and the requirements. So the first time I came across this was in the UK, where they have, in financial products, they have this concept of affordability. And so the UK financial regulator is very interested in companies having strong stress testing for affordability to make sure that you never offer a financial product to someone that makes their life unaffordable. Like, you literally can't give someone a credit card limit that if they maxed out, they then couldn't pay, or if they paid it, it meant that they were not able to pay for transport, not able to buy food. So even if they can pay, the concept of affordability assumes like life must be okay. But it's so broad that it's super open to interpretation. And so then, but they did that on purpose. And I'm seeing that being the trend more and more, that like, hey, we can't keep up with you guys. You're inventing too fast. So we're going to give you a vague landscape.
A blanket.
And then you're going to have to lean in and you're going to have to figure something out somewhere in there. And then we're going to decide if that falls foul. And then we'll tell you why it's wrong. And it's a bit of a scary space to be in, because obviously some of the punitive charges, and even just like no one wants to be in like legal cases for years and years because of something.
Right.
But I don't want to oversteer with it, because also regulation is a trailing thing, but it's been an interesting journey trying to understand. So what can we do? And it's like, well, we're not sure. And this is the stuff we think we can't do. Yeah. So the boundaries are quite interesting. And once again, my brain is just fried with legalese.
You are going to come out of this with some interesting, not even data points, just some interesting knowledge that it's going to sit with you.
It's going to sit with me. It might haunt me. I feel like I'm now in a weekly cryptography meeting. I may be able to apply for a job as a professor of cryptography at some point. I may also be able to go for chief legal officer as well as chief product officer. I mean, why not?
Why not? Right. Hey,
basically,
the world is your oyster.
The world is my oyster, but I am enjoying being the dumbest person in every room right now, because it is all open space for like exploration and thinking. And so I know it sounds boring to many people, but for me, it's a lot of fun. The art of possibility making. So yeah. We've made this show for you, and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Bussa, with theme music by 031 Mash.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.